Unsettling new details are coming to light about the man police say brutally murdered a local tech CEO. The other disturbing crimes he's accused of as Fox 45 News questions why the public wasn't warned sooner.
Could this knowledge have prevented Pava's death?
And what state lawmakers will do about violent repeat offenders in Maryland.
When will we see you demand lawmakers take action to ensure that a suspect like this doesn't get released to commit another heinous crime like we saw?
Concerns about the future of some city programs funded with ARPA dollars. We examined what could happen to those programs when that money runs out. Then good news in Birdland. As the Orioles keep their eyes on the World Series, the team learns they'll be staying in Baltimore. The details of a new lease.
Live from WBFF in Baltimore, this is Fox 45 News at 10.
How sweet it is. The champagne flowing in the Orioles clubhouse as the O's clinch their first AL East crown in 9 years.
That's right. They got it done with a 2-0 win over the Boston Red Sox, most appropriate, in front of a raucous hometown crowd at Camden Yards. This is the hottest team in Major League Baseball, bar none. Good evening. I'm Kai Jackson.
And I'm Mary Bubala. Such a magical night at the ballpark as the O's put a stamp on a signature regular season.
Let's go right to Morgan Adson, who's been at Camden Yards all night. Morgan, what a moment.
Hey guys, and it's still going on. I mean, we're right here on the field right now. This is more for like kind of family and friends action. They're taking in and taking pictures, but you can see out in the outfield and right field, American League East champs. That has not lit up since 2014. While this ball club still says they have plenty to get through this season, this is by far a moment.
On Edmondson Avenue. He is a repeat violent offender.
So lots of people are asking, why was he out of prison to begin with, and why didn't police notify the public sooner?
Tonight, our team of reporters is pressing city and state officials for answers.
We begin with Keith Daniels and the lingering questions for BPD as we learn more about the timeline. Keith?
Well, Mary and Kai, we have the court documents. They detail that gruesome crime scene that police discovered. They also tell us how LaPierre was killed, the cause of her homicide, blunt force trauma, and strangulation. But tonight, many questions remain in the investigation, including the handling of the search for Billingsley. Tonight, we're learning more about the moments before the murder of Pava LaPierre and her contact with the accused killer, Jason Billingsley. Newly obtained charging documents in this case, and another violent crime police say Billingsley, a convicted felon and sex offender, committed just days apart. First, an attempted murder, then rape and arson in West Baltimore, September 19th. Then the murder of LaPierre at her apartment building near Mount Vernon. Investigators saying now it happened Friday, September 22nd. The 26-year-old woman's body discovered on the roof of the building that following Monday. Tonight, court documents revealing surveillance video show LaPierre entering her apartment building at about 10:30 p.m. last Friday. Later, she got on the couch in the lobby, walked into the front door. She's seen speaking to a man who police say waved her to the door. Then both of them are seen getting on the elevator together. The footage shows him later leaving a stairwell into the lobby.
We don't know if there are any connections previously to Miss LaPierre or Mr. Billingsley.
Baltimore police peppered with questions Wednesday over what the department did know. Billingsley had been identified as the suspect who raped a woman and attempted to kill her and another man inside a home on Edmondson Avenue September 19th. In that incident, court documents reveal the female told investigators Billingsley identified himself as maintenance. She said he kicked in the front door, pointed a gun at her, duct taped her, and handcuffed the other victim, then raped, slashed, and set them on fire. A warrant was issued for Billingsley's arrest not long after, but the public never notified. When questioned,
This was not a random act of violence.
Acting Baltimore Police Commissioner Richard Worley said there was no indication Billingsley was committing random acts, and investigators were actively tracking him. Still, Fox 45 News pressed Worley on why no alert for the public.
You said Billingsley was being tracked, yet he was still able to commit another violent, heinous act. How is that so? And at what point do you weigh the community safety? This was a violent rapist who was roaming the streets of Baltimore, and the public had no idea. Could this knowledge have prevented Pava's death?
I'm not going to speculate whether it could have prevented her death, but what I know we did is as soon as we realized that there was a public safety, we had the press conference.
But during the initial press conference, BPD also not revealing Billingsley was in fact the suspect in both cases.
Because there was 2 victims from Edmondson Avenue that were still out. One was in the hospital, one was at their location. We had to get them protection if we were going to put that information out.
Well, Worley said he's confident the department handled both cases properly. He said if there was a mistake, he would say there was a mistake, like he said he did during the Brooklyn Day mass shooting. We're live tonight. Keith Daniels, Fox 45 News.
Keith, thank you. Well, more charges for Billingsley out of Baltimore County. According to charging documents, he stole a gun from his friend's home in Owings Mills. Investigators say the theft happened on Monday, the same day LaPere's body was found. Investigators have not said if Billingsley was armed when he was arrested.
Given Billingsley's criminal history, many are asking why someone with such a record was out on the streets. City leaders say the laws surrounding repeat offenders need to be re-examined.
Rapists shouldn't be let out early, period. When you rape someone, no matter if it's someone's daughter, son, their wife, like, you should not get out early, period, for that kind of offense.
Well, Billingsley had more than half of his sentence suspended in a plea deal. According to City State's Attorney Ivan Bates, that deal in the case was below guidelines. Fox 45's Maxine Stryker spoke with the judge not involved in the case, but who talks about how sentences are determined.
It was 2015 when Jason Billingsley pled guilty to a first-degree sex offense. Sentenced to 30 years in prison, he struck a plea deal where he was only ordered to serve 14 years.
And the plea was a little bit below guidelines. With every single case, there are different issues that you have to look at.
According to the court transcript, Judge Emmanuel Brown said he didn't think the sentence was long enough, noting the prosecutors struck the agreement when the victim in the case didn't want to testify.
We even know that the judge who handled the case was a little reluctant in terms of accepting that plea bargain.
Retired Judge Wanda Keys Hurd, who was not associated with this case, spent 21 years on the bench in Baltimore City Circuit Court, at one point serving as chief judge. She says they do their best with the information they're given, saying in sex offense cases it can be especially difficult for victims to testify.
In that instance, if you're having problems with your witness, the judge then has to weigh whether or not going along with the guilty plea is worth the chance versus the alternative, which would be no guilty finding at all. In other words, if the victim doesn't cooperate, it is very likely the state can't prove their case.
Ultimately, Billingsley was released last October on good behavior credits, a decision not made by the judge. But other judges' decisions have been called into question in Baltimore in several recent cases.
Right there.
Judge Melissa Finn has handed out a series of high-profile rulings, including the decision to vacate Adnan Syed's murder sentence, which was later reinstated.
This is crazy.
She also accepted a plea deal from Marilyn Mosby's office that released convicted arsonist Luther Trent. Trent served less than 6 months in jail after he admitted to trying to burn down his ex-girlfriend's house. Finn eventually overturned the plea deal. Last June, police say Austin Davidson killed a Wicomico County Sheriff's deputy. In 2019, he'd faced 20 years for armed robbery, but Judge Finn sentenced him to probation before judgment, setting him free. And days after that case, Fox 45 News learned Joseph Black, the man accused of hitting and dragging a police officer with his car, was also out on a plea deal from Finn's courtroom. He had been charged with attempted homicide, but that was pleaded down to handgun charges, setting him free after serving 20 months. Providing such information to the public was the goal of the Judicial Transparency Act, which aimed to produce a report card for judges detailing the sentences and plea deals offered, along with their names. The plan passed, but without the names of the judges released with the data.
This creates as much transparency as a brick wall. They're hiding behind a closed courtroom and behind their row.
However, Hurd says the information is all there for the public to find.
Most people can find out where the case was, and who arraigned the case, who heard any motions on the case, and where the jury trial was set, and how many days it was there, and who sentenced the defendant.
Yeah.
That's information you can find if you want it. So I don't agree with you that it's a secret and it's not known, and I just don't agree with that.
She says it's important to remember judges are voted into office, and if you don't trust their judgment, you can elect someone else.
I know as a judge for 21 years, I didn't get a crystal ball that told me whether I should or should not release someone on probation. You make your best considered judgment decision. That's why the citizens hired you, and I literally mean hired you. The citizens of Baltimore City vote for the judges, and they trust your judgment, and you exercise that judgment without a crystal ball.
Maxine Stryker, Fox 45 News.
Well, Fox 45 News also pressed Governor Moore on the changes he wants to see to repeat offender legislation in Maryland. Mackenzie Frost has his response tonight.
Baltimore City leaders say that Jason Billingsley is a repeat violent offender, and we're pressing Governor Wes Moore to find out if he's going to demand lawmakers in Annapolis pass legislation to implement tougher penalties. Maryland law is under the microscope again. Jason Billingsley suspected of brutally killing Baltimore Tech CEO Pavel Lapierre at her apartment building. Despite being denied parole twice, Billingsley released in October 2022 after serving 2/3 of his sentence for first-degree sex offense.
In the state of Maryland, you can earn what's called diminution credits. It was more or less the systematic, to me, failure in terms of what happened.
Baltimore City State's Attorney Ivan Bates says the diminution credit system should be re-evaluated, especially since in 2016, the Justice Reinvestment Act allowed Billingsley, who is a convicted sex offender, to tally up good behavior credits.
Maybe the legislature could maybe look at what first-degree sex offense or first-degree rape. Are these individuals still going to be eligible for diminution credits?
While touring Baltimore City Community College, we pressed Governor Wes Moore. When will we see you demand lawmakers take action to ensure that a suspect like this doesn't get released to commit another heinous crime like we saw?
Pava was a light, and she was a leader in our community. She was a leader in their tech community, and she was failed. I want results, and we've got to move on this because Pava was failed, and we have to do a better job of making sure we have laws in the books that are protecting our community and getting these violent offenders off of our streets.
There was a bill introduced during last session and several years prior that would have targeted violent repeat offenders, and it never moved. Will that change during next session?
I want to make sure that in the next session, and our administration will be working closely with the administration to make sure that we have bills that will make it to my desk that can be pushed, moved, and that I can sign that can make sure we're getting repeat violent offenders off of our streets.
Are you demanding the Democrats do that?
I'm going to be working with our legislature to ensure that we can have legislation that will move, make it to my desk, and that I will sign to make sure we're getting and keeping violent offenders off of our streets.
Not a direct answer from the governor about the Violent Firearms Offender Act, which called for tougher penalties for repeat violent offenders. Meanwhile, State Senator Antonio Hayes suggests narrowing who is allowed to be released under the diminution credit system.
Would you support legislation that eliminates the good time served credits for someone in a situation like this?
It depends. When it comes to extreme levels of violence, I think that is something worth considering.
And remember, the bill targeting repeat violent offenders has been introduced year after year after year without movement. So it's unclear if 2024 will be any different.
When asked about making changes to the diminution credit system, the governor's office says all options are on the table to ensure Maryland communities are safe. In the newsroom, Mackenzie Frost, Fox 45 News.
House Speaker Adrian Jones and Senate President Bill Ferguson are two of the most powerful lawmakers in Annapolis. If you want to contact them about public safety legislation, their phone numbers, email addresses right there on your screen.
That brings us to our question of the day. Do Maryland's current crime laws make you feel more safe or less safe? 95% of those who voted say less safe. You can make your voice heard at foxbaltimore.com/vote.
Coming up on Fox 45 News at 10, from Baltimore City to Anne Arundel County and beyond, agents scoured the state for accused murderer Jason Billingsley for days. A closer look at the timeline and how he was found. Several city programs, including GVRS, get all their funding from the American Rescue Plan. Fox 45 News questions what happens when that money runs out.
We are getting ready for another cool day tomorrow as temperatures only reach the upper 60s and low 70s, will stay below average. But next week, we're looking at a return to the 80s. I'll let you know how long that warm stretch lasts coming up.
And right after the break, a parasite found in drinking water across our area. What you need to know to keep you and your family healthy.
And as we head to break, as the late great announcer Chuck Thompson would say, ain't the beer cold in Birdland, as the Baltimore Orioles have clinched the AL East division. Thousands of people in the Baltimore area are being asked to be careful with tap water because a parasite was detected at Druid Lake Reservoir.
Yeah, take a look at the map. The impacted area in red stretches well into Baltimore County to the north and even a small part of Howard County to the south.
Fox 45's Amy Simpson has details, including a water testing process underway right now.
The impact zone includes portions of Baltimore City as well as both Baltimore County and Howard County. Today, a city DPW official telling me more than 570,000 residents fall under this advisory. A look at Druid Hill Reservoir today, as this portion of the regional water supply is now flagged for bacterial contamination, a parasite called Cryptosporidium, detected in low levels during water testing just recently required under an order from the Environmental Protection Agency.
Collected on Tuesday, September 19th.
Baltimore City taking a water sample from Druid Lake September 19th. The city finally learning of that contamination this week on Tuesday, September 26th. And public notification began today, September 28th, a full 9 days after the original water sample was collected.
We issued the advisory this morning for MDE guidance.
The city adamant the parasite is not a threat to the general population, insisting this bacteria was detected in such low levels that lab techs said the exact source of the contamination will likely never be found. But this map shows just how large the potential impact zone is, stretching across 3 jurisdictions.
Looked at all of the modeling data to see in water that was released through Druid Lake, where did that end up in our system?
Today, city officials with a warning for vulnerable populations.
Younger children and older adults are at risk.
And those who are immunocompromised.
Cryptosporidia infections can cause diarrhea, can cause a lot of GI upset, vomiting, can occasionally cause fever.
Saying anyone with concerns is encouraged to boil or use bottled water. But news of this contamination also puts Baltimore City officials on the defensive.
I want to be very clear because I heard throughout this call a comparison to the previous E. coli incident. This is not E. coli.
It was just last September, 1 year ago, when the city faced major blowback for its handling and public notification of an E. coli contamination in West Baltimore. That contamination prompted days of water distribution and unease over the safety of the city's water supply. In the aftermath of the E. coli crisis, Mayor Brandon Scott defended the city's response.
There was no misbundling of communication. This wasn't something that DPW mismanaged.
Though Fox 45 News later reported the state notified Baltimore City. It violated federal regulations when it failed to alert the public of that E. coli contamination within 24 hours. Now for those questioning the timing and response to this current parasitic concern. Today, Fox 45 News asked the Maryland Department of the Environment and the EPA what guidelines or communication exists related to this type of contamination. Both agencies directing our question back to Baltimore City, as a top city official says there are none.
Not regulations around notification that exist. And so we mobilized very quickly once we determined that there was a positive result.
Now, today, city officials said another water sample was taken from here at Druid Lake just yesterday, but DPW's interim director said that it takes anywhere from 5 to 7 days for those results to come back, which means it could be well into next week before residents get any new data on the status of this contamination. In Baltimore, Amy Simpson, Fox 45 News.
For anyone curious to see if their address falls within this impact zone, there's an interactive map online. You can find a link to it on our website, foxbaltimore.com.
Well, we are dealing with a few very, very spotty showers around the state, and overnight, there is the chance for a few more showers leading into the morning. Coming up, I'll have a closer look at the timing of the rain and what you can expect for the rest of the weekend in my Weather Authority forecast.
Well, the road to the World Series now runs through Baltimore. The Orioles clinching the AL East. We'll have much more on tonight's big win coming up in Sports Unlimited.
Well, some city council members raised the red flag tonight as city agencies seem slow to spend American Rescue Plan dollars. A closer look at their concerns and how the city could lose millions if they don't act faster.
I'm Christine Frizzau in Washington with a look at the first impeachment inquiry hearing into President Joe Biden. The arguments both sides are making.
We are following three big stories. The Orioles clinch at Camden Yards. Sights and sounds from a joyous clubhouse as the O's take home their first AL East crown since 2014.
Maryland's budget surplus is disappearing. Fox 45 is looking after your tax dollars. We hear from one expert who says a few government programs could be on the chopping block.
Budget concerns in Baltimore as well, as the city is working to allocate more than $600 million in American Rescue Plan funding.
We begin there. Several key city programs are funded entirely by ARPA dollars. Now, they face an uncertain future when that money runs out.
That's right. Fox 45's Jeff Abel joins us live with those concerns tonight and what groups may be at risk. Jeff?
Well, when these dollars run out, the city could have some hard decisions to make on programs like the Group Violence Reduction Strategy, which is funded almost entirely with ARPA dollars. But more immediately, there's a new concern. If the city doesn't start spending these dollars, it could stand to lose these dollars.
Thanks to the federal government, City Hall is now flush with funds. It's sitting on $641 million in COVID relief dollars, and tonight came pleased to start spending it.
I really would like to know when this money going to be spent.
Of the city's $641 million it received from the federal ARPA program, so far, just $120 million, or 18%, has been spent. $236 million, or 37%, has been obligated for specific projects.
Oh yeah, I definitely have concerns. I mean, there's we've planned on so many projects, and we're seeing that the spending hasn't happened.
At City Hall tonight, council members tried to understand why city agencies have been slow to spend. Of the $90 million the health department received, just 15.9% has been spent. Of the $45 million the city dedicated to Monzi, just 13.8% has been spent. And of the $73.5 million the city dedicated to homeless services, just 1% has been spent.
We have a lot used for this money in the homeless population.
Tonight, the director of the office that oversees ARPA spending delivered a litany of reasons why city agencies have been slow to spend.
That there is no spending because of some challenges around environmental review, that development was delayed due to a combination of financing challenges. In addition, we know that construction costs are continuing to escalate.
If the city hasn't obligated the funds by the end of next year, it must return them to the federal government. For now, the race is on.
I don't want to see the city in a position where we have to forfeit any of that funding because we haven't obligated it.
We are not leaving money on the table.
And it needs to be something needs to be done real fast in a hurry.
Well, the federal government does allow these funds to be used toward reducing taxes, but so far at City Hall, no discussion of that. We're live. Jeff Abel, Fox 45 News.
A new report from the Baltimore City Inspector General's office reveals nearly $5 million in city school employee retirement funds didn't go to the right place. Inspector General Isabel Mercedes Cumming joined us on Fox 45 News today at 5 o'clock to outline how technology may have led to the error.
Because we had a new retirement system start in 2014, and what happened was the people that between the 2014 to 2020, they ended up getting basically lost. They never got enrolled in the system. And there were people that were, because it takes 10 years to vest, there were people that were going to be coming up on retirement and suddenly finding out for the first time they had no retirement monies.
Well, Cummings says her office first flagged that issue in 2019, but the pandemic interrupted parts of the investigation. She confirms the money has been restored to the right retirement accounts.
The governor, the comptroller, this is a fiscal reality check for them. And they need to understand that they can't keep on spending money and promising to spend money that they don't have.
Well, state leaders taking a close look at Maryland's financial future amid reports about a massive deficit looming. Fox 45's Rebecca Pryor explains how this could impact you.
As we prepare to introduce our next budget for fiscal year 2025 come January, the administration's work is cut out for us.
Slowing economic growth across the state, putting Maryland's massive $3 billion rainy day fund at risk of drying up.
These low growth rates do not keep pace with growth in expenditures, hence the structural deficit that we face.
Budget and Management Secretary Helene Grady projecting an even more dire outlook than this June report, in which the Department of Legislative Services predicting the previous structural surplus fueled by federal COVID funding will dive to a more than $400 million deficit by 2025, a deficit that will continue to grow to $1.8 billion by 2028, potentially emptying the state's current reserves.
We must continue to proceed with a degree of caution moving forward.
Now it's up to, in many ways, the legislature to figure out, okay, how are we going to balance things out, especially when you have all these different priorities?
According to political analyst John Deedy, costly legislative promises made by Governor Wes Moore could be on the chopping block, including the blueprint for Maryland's future, scheduled to increase education funding by $3.8 billion each year over the next 8 years, and the Red Line, another multi-billion-dollar investment in mass transit.
I think that the problem is that a lot of the big dreams you have as a candidate often don't become the big reality.
And unless he wants to raise taxes on the citizens of Maryland, they're going to have to cut spending.
Although from higher taxes to increased tolls, taxpayer advocates warn against balancing the budget on the backs of voters struggling to save in a struggling economy.
There's going to be a lot of blowback.
And that's going to be unpopular, and it's going to be bad for the economy of Maryland.
Rebecca Pryor, Fox 45 News.
On Capitol Hill, House Republicans held their first impeachment inquiry hearing into President Biden. They're trying to make the case that Biden and his family benefited financially from his position in government. Democrats are pushing back on the allegations. National correspondent Christine Frizzell has the fallout.
Hunter Biden's business dealings long under investigation by the Senate, the Department of Justice, and most recently, the House Oversight Committee. But it's this question that remains central to the impeachment inquiry into his father, President Joe Biden.
What were the Bidens selling to make all this money?
House Republicans have long argued Hunter Biden had little experience or power to earn positions on the boards of companies like Burisma Energy in Ukraine or CEFC in China, that he was instead paid as a sort of middleman between the company and Joe Biden, then serving as vice president.
Whether it was lunches, phone calls, White House meetings, or official foreign trips, Hunter Biden cashed in by arranging access to Joe Biden, the family brand.
GOP lawmakers have for months insisted the firing of Ukrainian prosecutor Viktor Shokin in 2016 was not for reasons of corruption, as Biden and others have said, but because Shokin was investigating Burisma.
This is an embarrassment.
Critics accusing Republicans of using emails and other messages from when Joe Biden was neither in office nor a candidate as evidence of his wrongdoing.
If the Republicans had a smoking gun or even a dripping water pistol, they would be presenting it today, but they've got nothing on Joe Biden.
Even a key Republican witness said while an inquiry was warranted, the burden of proof has not yet been met.
I do not believe that the current evidence would support articles of impeachment. That is something that an inquiry has to establish.
In addition to making the case Joe Biden benefited from his son's business deals, Republicans are also trying to prove that his Justice Department had a hand in covering up parts of the investigation into his son, a claim Attorney General Merrick Garland has repeatedly denied. In Washington, I'm Christine Frizzau.
Still ahead, agents across the state helped track down Jason Billingsley, a deeper dive into the manhunt for a suspected killer on Maryland's Most Wanted. And excitement buzzing throughout Baltimore as the O's clinch the AL East. We'll have a live report from Camden Yards coming up in Sports Unlimited.
And tonight we have the chance for a few spotty showers. Otherwise, we fall to the upper 50s and low 60s before another cool day tomorrow. I'll let you know how high temperatures get and when to expect a warm up in my full forecast.